Something like 25 million people visited that fair in 6 months. There had never been anything like this. There were pavilions for all these other nations and countries, and they exhibited their wares and they sold their goods. There'd never been a mingling of the marketplace of world culture and economics quite like this.
But the representation of different races at the World's Fair was often kind of racist. It's like Africans who had been imported and were just kind of there almost like they were in a zoo.
They were dressed up in African garb, half naked, dancing every day for people to see them. There was a group of Eskimos brought from way up in northern Alaska, and they had to perform in the heat of summer in all of their furs.
The World's Fair was important in the process of reconciliation, of the North and South coming together, of creating a unified nation. However, African Americans, very deliberately, were not included. And that sent a very clear message that African Americans were not a part of the nation.
Ida B. Wells wanted to be there to address the world. Her idea was to hand out pamphlets to visitors.
Wells and Frederick Douglass came together to demonstrate that African Americans had indeed made significant contributions to the nation in education, in employment, in religious life, that they had progressed from slavery.
When the White City refused to give Black Americans a dedicated exhibition space to display the race's progress since the Civil War, Ida B. Wells and Frederick Douglass decided to fight back. Their widely distributed protest pamphlet shone a bright light on African American achievement, while also illuminating what Wells called the twin infamies of lynching and convict leasing.
After many Black people lobbied for a long time, they ultimately got some form of representation at the World's Fair. Negro Day, which proved to be enormously controversial.
The worst part of that Negro Day was watermelon stands set up all over the fair. Frederick Douglass was asked to be the primary speaker. And at first, he didn't want to do it. But then he decided, yes, he would.
There is no Negro problem. The problem is whether the American people have loyalty enough, honor enough, patriotism enough to live up to their own Constitution. We Negroes love our country. We fought for it. We ask only that we be treated as well as those who fought against it.
Silver-tongued Lion delivered one of his strongest indictments. And as fate would have it, it would be one of his last major speeches. On February 20th, 1895, Frederick Douglass died in Washington, D.C., at the age of 77. Douglass's death closed a major chapter in the history of our people and begged the question, who would step forward and lead?
Booker T. Washington's a great American story. He hears that there is a school in Hampton, Virginia, walks all the way across the state of Virginia on his own as a young boy. He shows up in this school and says, I want to come to your school.
Booker T. Washington becomes the principal and leader of Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama, situated in the Lion's Mouth. He enters this space to build a school for African Americans and creates it into something that no one ever saw before.
He thought that it was best for African Americans, especially from the South, to gain an industrial education, to be able to master core skills that they could then put to use and ideally translate that into land ownership, business ownership, into the field of teaching, and build up institutions of their own.
He had the ear of leading white Northern philanthropists. Washington gave them a very palatable formula to follow. Give me your money, and I will build schools that will produce some teachers, but also the people to do the work that you think these people should be doing.
Two years after Frederick Douglass denounced the savagery of lynching, Booker T. Washington, at the Atlanta Cotton Exposition, gave what would become his most famous address. It signaled a profound change of course.
To those of my race who depend on bettering their condition, our greatest danger is that in the great leap from slavery to freedom, we may overlook the fact that the masses of us are to live by productions of our hands, and fail to keep in mind that we shall prosper in proportion as we learn to dignify and glorify common labor, and put brains and skill into the common occupations of life.
Washington declared that black men had sought political power too prematurely during Reconstruction, that they would be better off dedicating their lives to aspiring to own their own farms than dreaming about election to the halls of Congress.
Washington suggests that if African Americans build a life of economic independence in the South, this can be a basis for future political and legal equality.
He's talking about Black people owning businesses, acquiring land, and becoming independent farmers. He's talking about self-help.
He was also a master of dissemblance, of telling white people what they wanted to hear, but sometimes doing something opposite behind the scenes, supporting cases against discrimination, doing things that, if they were made public, would certainly get him in trouble in the eyes of many of his white supporters.
Washington can look like a traitor to Reconstruction and a defender of it, because he forces us to evaluate how we think about the relationship between politics and economic independence. For that reason, he can look like both the most conservative and at times the most radical leader in a turn-of-the-century South.
As Booker T. Washington preached the gospel of social separation, the concept of separate but equal was playing out on a much larger stage.
Plessy versus Ferguson is the case that took up the question that was left by the Supreme Court a decade earlier. If segregation is mandated by the state, is it unconstitutional?
Louisiana passed a separate cars statute, essentially requiring